dans une France fière. Je veux que les Français puissent...
In French opinion polls, Marine Le Pen and her anti-immigrant National Front Party have had a consistent lead in the run-up to the first round of the presidential election in April. Le Pen inherited the party from her father, Jean-Marie.
Dans 20 ans, la France sera une république islamique.
He was both Islamophobic and anti-Semitic.
De l'histoire de la guerre, à moins
He dismissed the Holocaust as a detail of history. Part of Marine Le Pen's success was to turn her back on her father's anti-Semitism. She even cast him out of the party so that she would look more moderate to voters, a move she is proud of.
L'antisémitisme, et pas plus que le racisme d'ailleurs, n'ont sa place dans le projet qui est celui du Front National, qui est un projet à destination de tous les Français et qui n'a pas vocation à effectuer une différence en fonction de l'origine, de la religion ou d'ailleurs de toute autre considération.
But does she apply the same logic to Islamophobia?
Mais je ne sais pas ce que c'est l'islamophobie. Moi, je ne sais pas ce que c'est. Voilà. Je note que cette islamophobie est un concept qui a été utilisé pour empêcher les gens comme moi de lutter contre le fondamentalisme islamiste. Voilà.
In France's Muslim neighborhoods, Islamophobia is seen as a very real phenomenon. France is home to the largest Muslim population in Europe. Muslims here feel unfairly targeted by laws banning religious clothing in schools and public buildings. Yasser Louati is a community activist in Paris's largely Muslim suburbs.
You are 4 times less likely to get a job if you are Muslims. If you are a Muslim woman wearing a headscarf, you have 1% chances of getting a job. So your exclusion is programmed and is scheduled, and you will encounter structural discrimination and exclusion at every step of your life.
France's troubled history with immigration goes back to the 1950s and 60s, when millions of North Africans poured across the Mediterranean and settled here. Many were Algerians who had fought on the side of France in Algeria's War of Independence. They quickly formed a kind of underclass. They never seemed to be accepted as fully French.
We are reaching the 3rd and 4th generation, and people not feeling part of this country. Muslims are always sent back to their ethnic group, to their country of origin, to their religion, to their neighborhood, to their class, but they are never part of the us with a capital U.
There is a growing realization in France that the inequities of the school system are a major contributing factor to the country's immigration struggles. British journalist Peter Gumble has written a book cataloging the systemic discrimination against any student from a different cultural background.
The large majority of these kids will not go on to higher education. They'll get what they call oriented to some professional qualification, which is deemed to be second class. And they will already, as they come into this, it's a middle school, and as they come into this middle school, already a lot of them will have problems with basic reading, writing, math, which they will never catch up on. And so this is the sort of place which is like a factory for failure. The figures show that if you are not French from a long time ago, if you don't fit into the sort of the mold of the French system, if the chances are that you won't get a job, that you will drop out of school, that you will fail, that you will not have a great life, and that you will not prosper.
In 1983, there was a landmark protest in France. Thousands of North African immigrants marched the almost 800 kilometers from Marseille to Paris, demanding to be accepted and to play a greater role in French society. The socialist government of the day was receptive and supportive of the protest and promised to work towards inclusiveness. Nathalie Nougaret is the former editor of the Paris newspaper Le Monde.
What happened after that, I think, was a series of disappointments that many Muslim youth, came to think that this society didn't really accept them, didn't really want to help them. And still today, in many ways, and even before the terrorist attacks, we know that this disgruntlement, this dissatisfaction was very strong.
Then, in 2005, came the massive riots in the Paris suburbs, driven mostly by the anger of young Muslim men.
C'est normal ça, ils nous contrôlent comme des chiens, on se met comme ça contre les...
They complained that nothing had changed in 20 years, that they faced discrimination at every stage of their lives.
There are too many obstacles. It starts at school, but then it continues when you try and get a job. You put your name in your CV, and immediately that's a black mark against you because you're not called Jean-Baptiste or Jean-Christophe. You're called Mohamed or Ahmed.
These racial and religious tensions in France play out in everyday life and in politics. Take this upscale market in the town of Béziers, 750 kilometers south of Paris.
Ça va? C'était bien.
Town Mayor Robert Ménard was elected in 2014 under the banner of the anti-immigrant National Front Party.
Et nous, on est fiers d'être ici, on est fiers des Halles et on est fiers d'être Biterrois. Merci à vous.
He is here to celebrate the renovation of this market, which he wants to keep free of any Muslim customers or Muslim food.
Ça suffit le halal. Ici, ça n'a pas sa place. Je n'ai pas envie de femmes voilées dans les halles, je n'ai pas envie de cuisine halal. J'ai envie de redire qu'on est ici chez nous. Voilà.
When the massive refugee camp near the northern city of Calais was recently dismantled, cities and towns across the country were each asked to take in a few refugees. The city of Béziers was asked to accept 40 migrants, but Mayor Ménard refused.
Parce que c'est 40 migrants de plus. C'est 40 migrants de trop. Pardon, dans une ville où il y a une telle population d'origine immigrée, où il y a déjà 2 centres d'accueil pour les demandeurs d'asile, oui, il y a trop d'immigration dans mes villes. Il y a des seuils de tolérance.
This openly racist attitude from Ménard has earned him some derision.
Toi, le maire de Béziers, tu nous as bien...
On this national TV show, he was teasingly compared to Adolf Hitler.
Comme le célèbre Adolphe Hoffmann.
Ça suffit.
Non, mais non. Non, Robert, attends. Non, attends.
In the streets of France, there are now pitched battles over immigration issues. On one side are students and other left-wing groups expressing solidarity with refugees.
Solidarité avec les réfugiés!
On the other side is the identity generation, a powerful youth group dedicated to the preservation of France's traditional white Catholic identity. They favor the expulsion of all illegal immigrants from the country. At night, a subgroup called Solidarity Generation patrols the streets to give out food to homeless people that are truly French. The first men they encounter apparently don't qualify.
Pierre, juste un café?
No food for them, only coffee.
Juste café.
Apparently the next group is white enough.
Est-ce que vous avez faim? Vous avez besoin de pain?
They get coffee and food too. Group leader Pierre Lazzi is unapologetic about his approach.
Nos gouvernements aident sans limite les migrants en leur débloquant des maisons, en leur débloquant des fonds. On veut combler ce déséquilibre en aidant les nôtres, en aidant les Français.
But what is it to be French? For years, the definition of the French identity has been widely debated. There is an attachment to the revolutionary values of liberty, equality, and fraternity. There is devotion to state secularism, keeping religion out of public life. Leading sociologist Patrick Simon says his recent detailed studies of French attitudes have led him to a controversial conclusion.
French national identity is now more than ever like a club. And to be a member of the club, you have to be accepted into it. And to be accepted into it, you have to be white. And at the end of the day, the fact of being black or Arab is perceived as a sign of not being fully French. The French national identity is putting people apart.
Simon's studies show that 40% of French-born Muslims don't feel they are regarded as truly French by other citizens. The recent terrorist attacks in Paris drew attention to the fact that many of the perpetrators were disaffected French-born children of Muslim immigrants.
They are born in France, they are raised in France, they have been to school in France, and they have been through a trajectory of exclusion. It's not a reason to commit, of course, terrorism. But we give more argument that there is no future for the Muslims in France because of discrimination and exclusion.
Marine Le Pen and the National Front say they are not against Muslims, just against Islamic religious fundamentalism.
C'est-à-dire de lutter contre la charia, c'est-à-dire de lutter contre ceux qui cherchent en réalité à effondrer les lois et la Constitution française et la culture qui est la nôtre pour imposer une culture qui nous est non seulement totalement étrangère, mais qui est totalement étrangère à nos valeurs. Voilà. Parce que je pense que c'est le nouveau totalitarisme du XXIe siècle, le fondamentalisme islamiste.
One of the key promises of the National Front is to strip the French nationality of any French-born dual citizen implicated in a terrorist crime. Recently, even the socialist government considered implementing that policy.
Basically, it's saying, because you're somehow only half French, you're suspect. And as soon as you cross the line, we'll take away your French part. We don't want you here. It's not saying... The right answer should have been, we have a real issue with integration, we have a real issue with radicalization, we need to deal with it, and we need to deal with it by integrating better, by educating better, by helping these kids get out of these ghettos and get jobs. And instead of that, it's, you damn foreigners, you know, you're blowing us up, and we're going to strip you of your French nationality. Completely the wrong answer.
The fact that France now has Europe's largest Muslim population and its most powerful anti-immigration party is creating an explosive mixture.
It creates a kind of vicious circle where you have a phenomenon of radicalization among some of France's Muslim youth, which is undeniable. And then on the other side, you have this reaction, this political reaction of a big part of the French electorate. You know, 7 million people voted for Marine Le Pen's party in December 2015, just weeks after the terrorist attacks in Paris. So there's like, it's like a vicious circle because these two things can feed each other.
Paris, the day after Donald Trump won the US election.
C'était le peuple français.
The National Front's #2 man, Florian Philippot, and his supporters seem to think that the Trump victory means they are headed for power too.
On s'est en tout cas réveillé avec une excellente nouvelle, l'élection de Donald Trump à la présidence américaine.
Nous vivons la fin d'un monde et la naissance d'un autre. J'ai décidé que j'allais continuer.
Marine Le Pen is riding the anti-immigrant wave in France, which has taken her party from the extreme fringes to a leading contender.
La réalité, c'est que le Front National, lorsque il était à 10-15%, était un mouvement de contestation, c'était un mouvement d'opposition. Lorsque je suis arrivé à la tête du Front National, j'ai souhaité en faire un parti qui mènerait au gouvernement et qui s'adapte à la réalité d'aujourd'hui.
While Marine Le Pen is almost certain to make it into the second round of the French presidential election on May 7th, she faces likely defeat then because the vote against her will not be divided. Nevertheless, her popularity has moved even left-wing parties to adopt more aggressive policies towards French Muslims and immigration. Terence McKenna, CBC News, Paris.
It's clear that many in France fear some sort of Muslim takeover, but do those fears have any basis? Last year, Ipsos Mori surveyed people in 40 countries, asking what proportion of their population they believed to be Muslim. The average guess in France was 31%, but the latest data from Pew Research put the figure at 7.5%. In Canada, the average guess was 17%. The truth, 3.2%.